Welcome to another edition of the program, the very edition for the 23rd of June 2021. I'm Temple Ashaju. This is Frontier Opening Bell, and we're happy to have with us today Ali Segar, who just joins us from Dubai. Thank you, Ali, for coming on. And Bosun Mofaye, our executive editor here at Frontier Africa Reports. Thank you, gentlemen, for helping us to commence the show again this morning. Let's check out the markets from yesterday's status. The Nigerian exchange nosedived by 1.81% on Tuesday, and the BRVM stock exchange was positive by 26 basis points at 160.92. The Egyptian stock exchange was positive by 1.44% at 10,000 psychological position. It is back to that line now. And you have the Nairobi Securities Exchange positive by 0.14%. Johannesburg Stock Exchange was marginally down 0.02%. We'll look at the Eastern African headlines we've got, where Kenya unveils 85 million Kenyan shillings coffee factory in Baringo. Kenya Bankers Association launched blended finance to help SMEs. Rwanda Stock Exchange listed Cimerwa PLC reports some 1 billion Rwandan franc profit after tax in 6 months. Merge Exchange Limited lists new 131,240 shares as new investment, and MSC approves listings of up to 2 billion notes of MCB Group on this platform. Bosun, let's hear your thoughts on this headline to start.
I guess I say good morning to everyone in the team. Cimerwa Cement from Betiva Capital and Ali Kansachu, the rich man of in Nairobi. Because just was coming in, we got Ali Segar, the rich man in Dubai. So we got the two Alis today. Let me just speak very briefly to the, I know Ali will be speaking more to some of the other headlines, but the Nairobi market yesterday, we saw a very strong turnover in dollar terms, about 13.09 million US dollars. Turnover in terms of volume was up strongly above 300%. Overseas buyers, that is foreign investors, were about 73% of yesterday's transactions. In buying, they were about 78%. They sold and bought in the market, fairly balanced in the manner of speaking. Then you got the shares of some of the big banks like KCB and Equity Bank are on the upside. So it looks like a very decent trading day for the Kenyan market. Speaking briefly only to the Kenyan Bankers Association, and I think I like the structure in Kenya a little bit better than Nigeria. And I'm just going to say that in just a minute, because what you have in Nigeria is what we call the Bankers Committee that meets with the central bank. But you have the Kenyan Bankers Association. In other words, this is an association of all the banks in Kenya, and they could independently intervene and do things on their own without the central bank. So each time I look at the structure of the association, I think it is time we have in this part of the continent a Nigerian Bankers Association, which is a body of all the bankers, not a bankers committee of the central bank. My thoughts, by the way. Thank you, Temple.
Thank you very much, Bosun, and welcome Ali Kansachu from Nairobi, Kenya. Thanks a great deal for coming through. Thank you as well, Cimerwa Cement from Betiva Capital Management. Thank you, Ali. Let's hear your thoughts on the Eastern African markets headlines before us.
So just to add to what Bosun was saying, it was a high volume action day at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. The Nairobi Stock Exchange is very bifurcated. We have probably about 6 to 8 stocks which are internationally recognized and of interest to international investors. Obviously, Safaricom is top of that list. Then we have the tier 1 banking stocks, Equity, Kenya Commercial Bank, ADSA, instantly recognizable and attractive to people. And I think when you take that bifurcation, if you strip out those stocks, the NSE 20, unfortunately, is at a multi-year low, probably about a 14 or 15-year low. That's seen in the NSE 20 index. But the Nairobi All Share, which is a composite of the market capitalization of these companies, it has not underperformed. It's actually outperformed in part because of Safaricom, which is close to a record high. So yesterday's activity was focused more on the banks, and particularly KCB and Equity Bank. And if I could just quickly touch on equity. Equity remains, for me, probably my top pick through this year, in part because of the DR Congo acquisition from last year. And, you know, James, Dr. Mwangi, this very iconic leader at Equity Bank, has developed a tremendous mass market franchise. 97%, for example, of transactions are now done outside the branch. And he's basically taken that model to the Congo, which is, you know, I remember someone describing it as a vierge, like a virgin banking environment. And he has a significant first mover advantage. And I think he has a significant product, which is going to do extremely well. So I would forecast that equity will be a top performer at the NSE this year. But bear in mind, when you look at the Nairobi Stock Exchange, it's two halves. You're looking at these very big, well-capitalized regional franchises, and then you're looking at the underlying companies which are operating in Kenya, and those have been significantly underperforming. Kenya's unveiling an 85 million shilling coffee factory in Baringo. You know, it's quite a story that Kenya used to be very well known globally for its coffee production, but the coffee production slid considerably. Today, we don't produce that much coffee. The quality is still very sought after. It's AA coffee, but we need a trigger to reignite the coffee production side. Uganda has overtaken us by a very wide margin and is doing extremely well. But Kenya is trying to sort of repair that whole side. And it'll be interesting to see how well this factory effort plays out. And just a final point about Kenyan Bankers Association that Burson was talking about. It's a very powerful association. It's the lobby group vis-a-vis the central bank and the regulators. And they also have a significant number of their own initiatives. The payment backbone, for example, is a Kenya Bankers Association effort, amongst other things. And that person is quite correct to say this is where the banks get together, coordinate their perspective, and lobby all the other stakeholders extremely effectively.
Thank you very much, Ali Kansachu. I appreciate those comments there. Let's move on to the West African and Nigerian markets headlines. Ex-legislator Farouk Lawan gets 7-year jail term over $500,000 subsidy bribe. Nigeria's Jumbo team to interface Twitter Incorporated over ban. Ecobank Nigeria has got agency banking, and that is basically to drive entrepreneurship as well as some other elements. Egbin Power is looking for $1.8 billion to expand output. In Burkina Faso, ITFC, Coris Bank approved 20 million euros for SMEs. In Togo, Amea Power launches 50 megawatts solar power plant. And we understand that that is the first in that region. Chima, we know of the ex-legislator that has now bagged 7-year jail term. But what do we know about the billionaire that actually granted him that bribe?
Well, I'm not sure I know as much as you do on that front, but I think there are other news there, there are other headlines that I'd like to speak on. We can see the ongoing talks on the Twitter ban. We're hopeful that it will be successful, given the very importance of Twitter to everyday Nigerian lives and businesses, and how Twitter has been very instrumental to Nigerian youth in, you know, giving them a voice as well as promoting their endeavors in terms of entrepreneurship and you know, tech and, you know, just many endeavors among Nigerians. So it will be interesting to see how that goes. Hopefully we'll see something positive in the next meeting or the next outcome. Another interesting highlight for me today is the Egbin Power 1.8 billion Naira capital raise that is expected to happen. It's interesting because there are a lot of challenges in the sector, and while this is a very impressive move, given the huge capital requirements, investments needed in the sector, a $1.8 billion capital investment is not a bad idea. But I think there are other other challenges that need to be fixed. For example, we know that currently in Nigeria, generating capacity is about 12,000 megawatts, but we are only able to transmit, to actually generate about less than 4,000 megawatts, and even transmit less. Last year alone, we lost about 22% of electricity generated during transmission, couldn't get to distributors and final users. So I think there are some other challenges that may need to be restructured properly first before we think of increasing capacity, such as improving transmission. Thankfully, this news has also come at a time when we're hearing that the BPE is planning to, or has advised that the TCN should be privatized. If we see that happening, if that happens soon, we should be looking at more investments from the private sector into transmission lines and transmission sector as a whole. That in turn would help put full use to the already existing transmission generating capacity that we have currently. Also, when I looked at the article from the company, I saw that they also plan to export to neighboring countries under the West Africa Power Pool, which I think is very interesting. We know that capacity is currently around 12,000, but we're not doing as much as that. So if there's an option to export to other West African neighboring countries with possibly cost-reflective tariffs to be paid, every businessman is going into business to make profits. So if that is a better option, and the cap to transmit to Nigeria is already at its limit anyway, I think we may be seeing more generating companies look to this trend, look to this outlet to sell the electricity generated. So that's what I think concerning it. I think it's a good move, but I think there are other things that need to be put in place. Even when you look at gas supply, there are still some challenges, some constraints in terms of gas supply. The Egbin Power plant is fed by escravos. And if you look at capacity, if they add the extra 1,700 megawatts that they're planning to add, I doubt that it would be able to be supplied complete gas supply by the escravos. But then I'm sure that's one of the things that they have looked into, and wait to see how the company will act going forward.
Right, and thank you so much, Chima. You prefer to go for where the money is, where you make some profit, actually, not some controversies. Bosin, let's get your sense of the backstory to some of these headlines.
Thank you, Temple. I think the controversy is a big story, and I'm sure Ali Sega, looking in from Dubai, would have seen because the Nigeria Twitter ban is a global story, by the way. So, Ali, what's the view from outside when this ban was imposed? What do we have from? What's the view from the international investors, market analysts looking at this kind of a situation in Nigeria?
Sorry, you are talking about the ban for the flights,
Twitter?
right?
For Twitter, yes, for Twitter and for the Emirates. Yes.
Yes, in Emirates, we can say that the social media are very controlled, well controlled. You cannot say anything, or you can say the media are very controlled. But internationally, the message that Nigeria sent is not that good. In fact, they say yes, we ban Twitter, we ban this kind of stuff. So the general message is not, we can say, comfortable for investors. They say yes, why they are doing that? Is there any tension in the country? So the message is not really clear, in fact.
Right, and thank you so much, Ali Segar, for that. Let's move on to the Southern African markets. We have the World Bank and the African Union teaming up to vaccinate 400 million Africans. PPC revenues lost 3%, rise in full year 2021 on weak Zimbabwean economy. First Mutual Limited posts of some 5.9 billion Zimbabwean dollars in gross written premium, and that's positive by 2% for the year 2020. Engen Botswana reports lower revenue of some 2.3 billion pula in the full year 2020 earnings. In Mozambique, they're selling the majority stake in Mphanda from $4.4 billion, a hydropower dam project in that country. We'll start with you, Ali Kansachu, for some updates and hear that of Bosen.
So let me start with this vaccination program for 400 million Africans. As you know, Africa as a whole, the vaccination rate is about 1% or below. We've currently got a serious third wave unfolding, particularly in southern Africa. Gauteng province is of course at the very epicenter of the South African outbreak, but we've had record highs now in Namibia, DR Congo, and a number of countries in that area. My concern is this vaccination program is so far behind the curve. There is no way we're going to get 400 million Africans vaccinated in the time required. We have this Delta variant now, which is previously known as the Indian variant. It's as far as Kenya. We got parts of Kenya which have a test positivity rate of close to 50%. It's really very, very alarming. And I think from an economic perspective, we are now in a very bad situation. Of course, the question is, how will our governments handle it? At the beginning of this pandemic, a lot of countries went for very hard lockdowns and have discovered subsequently that the cost of the economy was too high. I think we're going to now see in the next few weeks this continue to unfold and intensify. And, some of these predictions of very strong rebounds on the continent, I think, are going to come very badly unstuck. And I think this probably, for me, is the biggest macro issue now across the continent. Looking at your other headlines quickly, PPC revenue slowing 3% on a weak Zimbabwe economy. Matili Cube, the finance minister, obviously would say that the economy is strengthening. This is probably backward looking in many ways. But, for example, they're predicting a very good harvest. The IMF, who did a virtual visit, I think it was last week, and upgraded the full year GDP by about 300 basis points. And they struck a reasonably bullish note. So I think it'll be interesting to see how Zimbabwe unfolds. Obviously, PPC might not be in the sweetest of sweet spots. You're probably better off if you're in the agri economy, for example. And then finally, just touch on Engen Botswana reporting lower revenue. Of course, Botswana, much wealthier than most of the other countries that we talk about, took a pretty robust and aggressive approach to lockdowns and so forth. And I think that fed into lower consumption of fuel. And obviously, the holy grail for a lot of these petrol companies has been the forecourt business. It'll be interesting to see how Engen performed on that score, because we've seen huge growth in the forecourt businesses, particularly around fast food and things like that.
Thank you so much, Ali Khan. Bosun, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the story around the Mphanda power project, hydropower, is one interesting thing. And if I just take that back to the Togo solar power plant, remember Propaco in Ivory Coast is also doing a biomass power plant, which is going to be the largest in West Africa. So Temple, always remember my warning: keep your eyes on your neighbors, because if you try not to get whatever you're doing right in Nigeria, your neighbors are going to take your lunch, and if you're not very careful, they're going to take your dinner as well. So you better watch it. So if Togo is doing 50 megawatts plants, what do they want to do? They're getting ready for the EFCFTA. They have a whole investment going on at the seaports and what have you. In terms of logistics, being a hub, France is supporting Togo. Then you got Ivory Coast, which is another economy. So between Togo, Benin Republic, and Cote d'Ivoire, these three countries, very close to Nigeria, to the west side, has to be closely watched and monitored at all times. And I'm not too sure if Nigeria's fiscal policy and monetary authorities are having the kind of thinking I'm having, because investments are going on the ground in these countries, and it's happening. Now, Zimbabwe, look at Zimbabwe, the stable electricity they've got. Remember, last week we got the IMF revising Zimbabwe's GDP for this year to about 6% from 3.1% previously. It's also on the back of power, electricity, by the way. So keep that in mind, Tempo. We need to keep this in mind that if you don't get your electricity right, folks are going to get away from you. That is the truth.
Right, and Bosun, thank you very much. Thanks a great deal. Let's move on to the Northern African markets headlines. As Egypt's trailer raises $42 million in a Series A funding. Zeta Investment raises bid to buy Alexandria National to £6 per share. Bank do Caire to launch e-payment firm by the fourth quarter of the year. Morocco CPI up 0.3% in May on higher food and non-food prices. And Polina Group Holding is paying some 0.26 dinar per share in dividends to its shareholders. Let's hear your thoughts, Ali Seger, on all of these headlines in the northern part of Africa.
Yes, I will start with Trela story because it's a very interesting story. You know, Egyptian startup Trela has raised $42 million. So it's a huge amount for Egypt, especially for, we can say, fintech companies. So they raised 30 million in equity and 12 million in debt. So what is Trela first? So Trela is an online platform linking shippers and truckers. Like this, the shippers and truckers can directly book freight loads for transport. So it's basically, we can say, a Uber for logistics. So Trela is here, we can say, to enhance the fragmented supply chain sector in Egypt, roughly. So why I say yes, it's a Uber of logistics. First of all, the chief executive officer is Omar Hagras, is a former Uber staff. So he knows quite well how to disrupt, we can say, an established market like logistics. So Trela has over 350 shippers registered on the app, including Coca-Cola and Maersk, and more than 15,000 independent truck drivers. So when I say it's totally fragmented, the sector, the logistics sector is totally fragmented with more than 15,000 independent truck drivers just registered into this application. So who has invested in Trela? So what is interesting, this is that Maersk, you know, we can say the logistics company, have led the funding round in the Egyptian startup Trela. So as of today, you know, Trela is operating in 3 markets, so Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan. With this new money coming in, they have big ambition to develop in other Gulf countries like UAE in the next 6 to 9 months, and also to invest in East Africa, West Africa for over the next 12 months. So it's a big, we can say, stuff going on the logistics sector in Egypt. And as you know, Egypt is, we can say, a leading country for logistics. Another thing, this is for Morocco. So we can say the Morocco Consumer Price Index. So as you said, it was driven by the rise of oil, as Morocco is an oil importer. So as you know, the oil is going up and Morocco is an oil importer. So it has impacted the consumer price index. And also due to the food sector, because you have also the revival of the domestic demand. So this is why the CPI has raised this much, in fact, for the last weeks, in fact. So it's a good sign of a healthy, we can say, economy.
Right, and thank you so much, Ali Seger. Thanks a great deal for the backstory you gave us on the Trela funding program, because that seemed like something that we have to keep our eyes on, like as Bosun will always say. Bosun, your thoughts before I get to
Yes, very quickly, the stock market yesterday, because you talked about earlier at the start of the program, you showed the market performance. The Egyptian market came back very strong for a second day, 1.44%, massive buying, $108.8 million in total transactions yesterday. The real estate continued to move very strongly in Egypt. And that's quite a good story, because you find Cleopatra Hospital, for example, up nearly 6%. You have the Palm Hills Development Company, which is a real estate, also up by 5.65%. So the real estate sector alone yesterday accounted for about 5.4% of the total market of the index of the EGX 30. So that's quite a very interesting trading day. Tunisia market was also a little bit very strong, although in terms of the size, the volume was a little bit smaller. Morocco came in with about $28.7 million in total transactions. But again, a very decent trading day across the North African corridor. But Egypt, of course, almost $110 million for a single day. That's a whole lot of transactions there.
Thank you very much, both. And Chima, where do we face today? What direction do you expect the market to pan out to face, rather?
Well, I guess we'll start from what we've seen so far this week. And so far this week has been, we've been seeing a red week-to-date performance. Currently, the ASI is down 2.07%. Most of those losses came from losses we saw yesterday. So currently we're seeing a negative market. However, also, although we're seeing that, we can see that volume and value in the market has picked up. So it may indicate a return of investor interest into the market. However, we expect that we'll still continue to see investors taking profit for at least the next maybe 2 sessions, or up until when they're ready to, rebalance their portfolio for the end of the Q2 period, and in anticipation of positive results from many of these companies across these sectors. So I think we'll still continue to see, some profit taking, but to close out the month of June, we should expect to see some level of profit taking.
Will that be more on the part of the domestic investor or the foreign portfolio investors?
Oh, I expect we'll see, more activities from the domestic players, because we can see that the international investors have been looking for a way out of the Nigerian market for a while now. That's what has played to the positive gains, or to the gains we can see in the oil and gas sector, with them favoring Seplat, because of its dual listing status, so they can try and repatriate some of their funds. So I think it has been majorly on the back of domestic investors, and I think that's what will continue to drive the equity market, going forward.
Thank you very much, Chima Ukadeke, consumer goods analyst with the Vetiva Capital Management in Lagos, Nigeria. Thanks a great deal. Ali Segar of Segar and Associates in Dubai. Thanks a great deal for your analysis, and thank you for joining us again on the show this morning. We do hope to have you on the show again one of these weekdays. And Bosun Mofaya, executive editor here at Frontier Africa Reports. Thank you so much for your insights on these headlines as well. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and do have yourself a wonderful day ahead. I'm Temple Ashaji. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.